All right, we better get started, so will we?
Yeah.
Okay, well, firstly, will we ask everyone to turn off their cameras, please? And you can just listen in. We'll have a section at the end, maybe for questions and answers, if anyone's in the form for it. I'm John. I'll be asking Phil a few questions, or Micháel a few questions. I think that's probably the first question. Hi, Eileen. Probably the first question is, who are you, and what name? How should we address you this evening?
Well, you can all call me Phil. Micháel is my Irish pseudonym because I write in two distinct genres. So I write historical fantasy under my real name, Phil Hughes, and I write Irish historical fantasy under my pseudonym, Micháel Cladáin, and I write crime novels under my name, Phil Hughes. Micháel Cladáin is sort of honour to my parents. My father was Michael, and my mother's maiden name was Burrows. Cladáin is Irish for Burrows. So that's how that name came into existence.
Very good. Okay, so what we might do is we might get you to do a couple of readings over the course of the evening, and we'll ask a few questions, and at the end then, as we say, if people have a question or two, you can ask it, and we'll have a toast at the end then. So without further ado, would you give us a first little reading maybe of Milesian Daughter of War? By the way, for people who are interested or who haven't bought it yet, there are links on the chat here for the ebooks and paperback, and there's also a link to Phil Hughes Publishing for a number of the other books. We'll talk about them shortly.
Okay, so I'll actually start with reading the first section of the book. So basically, Queen Maeve has gone to the island of Anglesey, known as Ynys Môn, where the Council of Druids are based. So the chapter is before rumours and Queen. Morrigan's messenger ruffled its feathers and cawed to get her attention. Good news or bad, she wondered. Before deciding it could only be bad. She doubted the goddess was with her, not again, not so soon. She took hold of the charm around her neck and breathed in deeply, bringing the smell of new blooms, heady, calming. The early evening breeze took the edge off the heat, if not off Macroth's temper. He was swatting at the flies swarming around his bald pate and swearing under his breath. Sighing, she looked back across the plain. Despite the crows staring down at her from atop the gatehouse, her moody guard, and her saddle soreness, she smiled. The ship's captain had been wrong. For once, hiring horses and crossing the island had proven problem-free. It was barely past mid-afternoon. She looked back at the hills and meandering narrow path leading to the gates before them, secluded and hard to get to. Caerleb was an imposing edifice, as the Druids had no doubt intended. How long have you been captain of guards, Macroth? She asked. Several years, lady, answered without looking. Several years ought to be enough time for you to know it is part of your function to announce me. I am aware. What then are you waiting for? A royal decree? Sorry, lady. He stumbled over the words, redness creeping up from his boiled leather armour and chainmail coif. Hello, the gate, he called, without looking at her. Who are you? A surly voice. We sent ahead, forewarning the council of my lady's arrival, as did half a dozen others this morning. Which one of the needy are you? Odolan, Macroth hissed under his breath. She leant over and took hold of his wrist, squeezing it ungently, making sure there was warning in her eyes. Well, not got all day, do I? The surly voice came back. I am Maeve, Queen of Connacht, she called. Known as the Scourge of Babylon, city of witchcraft, she did not say, but smiled inwardly at the thought. The wagging tongues of garrulous bards were useful for some things. Had the gatekeep seen the crow on the gatehouse, he would now be cursing his surliness, she knew. Ah, yes, elders are expecting you. They honour you, lady. They ordered others to wait. You go straight to the feast hall, he said as he opened the gate. Honoured above others is the Cailleach of Crochan. Riding through, Maeve looked down on the gatekeep. The little hair he had was grey, wispy. He was wearing a leather vest, naked arms crisscrossed with the latticework of old battle scars, nodding, smiling. What would be a toothy smile if he only had teeth? Her intended reprimand turned to a smile and a nod. The veteran's scars shone out through a sudden blush. "You know the way, to be sure," he said, grinning like a settlement idiot. Maeve smiled again before riding on. "Wait here," she told Macroth as she dismounted. "I cannot allow it, lady." "Cannot allow it? You forget yourself. I am sworn to protect you." "I need no protection. They are elders, more used to dealing out words than sword strokes," said while frowning at his impertinence. Macroth looked sceptical. "The druidess Dornall trains warriors for war, so knows as much about killing as she does words. You will wait here, Macroth. I am not engaging in a debate." "Very well, lady," he bowed, trying to hide his displeasure by looking away, angering her when she needed to be calm. "For once, Macroth, do as I instruct, and with the willingness befitting a retainer," she hissed, before ducking through the door. Remembering why she kept him was becoming more difficult of late. Why she elevated him to begin with brought a fleeting smile to her face. She hesitated before starting up the aisle. Time for her eyes to adjust and the smile to be forced away. She felt a tingle as the hairs on her arm became animated. Knowing all eyes in the hall were on her, it made her feel like an errant pupil called to the fore by the druid. "Welcome, Maeve," the druidess Dornall said with a nod. Gazing at the head of the table, Maeve smiled. Dornall was in the prime seat, confirming her position as council lead. Birogue, the sorceress, was sitting to her immediate right. Myrthin, the druid of Inis Mon, was opposite Birogue, and Mug, advisor to Mesgegra, king of Leinster, was furthest from Dunel. The young druid, Tidal, was absent. As the druid of Tara, Maeve supposed Tidal was out searching for a new high king. The chairs of Tlachta, the druidess of Munster, and Cathva, the druid of Ulster, also stood empty. Maeve sighed her relief. She had feared meeting Cathva since setting off from Connacht. It was not the man so much as what he would say and do when he heard her petition. "How may the council help you this time?" Dornall asked with a smile. Maeve looked at the druidess and wondered whether there was any sarcasm in the question. All she could see in the limited light was a genuine smile and a welcoming expression. More welcome than the last time, she realized. But then, they could not have been less welcoming than the last time. Even word of the rape had elicited little reaction from them. "I have come before you once more to request the council stand opposed to Macnessa's election during the next Assembly of Kings." "Yes, we thought that might be the reason, which is why Cathva is not here," Birogue laughed. "I see. And why did you think that, might I ask?" "You are not as close to us as you might wish. Your petitions are of a theme, shall we say?" The druids around the table smiled and nodded, making Maeve feel foolish. Dornall frowned as she asked, "Do you have a suitable alternative?" "There are many worthy, surely. We have not been able to find a replacement, Maeve. Tidal is out scouring the 5 kingdoms and has been for many months." "I see." Maeve was unable to keep the derision from her tone. Dornall sucked in a breath before continuing. "There is still a threat from the south and east. Since crushing the Gauls, these Romans have twice invaded Alba. A full invasion and suppression of the Britons will soon follow. After them, who do you think will be next?" Dornall looked around the table. Maeve looked at each of the druids, who were staring at various points in the hall, lost in their own thoughts. "The 5 kingdoms will be next. Arion needs to be strong, united to face the threat. Arion needs a high king. Without alternatives, Arion needs the king of the Ulaid. There must be someone else. We cannot have 5 kingdoms full of chieftains and warriors without one suitable candidate for high king. One who is not known as the deceiver and capable of atrocity," Maeve thought, unwilling to voice it again. "Perhaps there are some. However, time is running short. We will stand around the bull ring during the next Beltane. It takes a lot of effort to train a new high king. Macnessa is already trained. It was his champion who murdered the women of Tara, and he raped me on the banks of the Bond during an earlier assembly," she did not say. Repeating her claim would appear weak.
Yes. Timekeeper. Well, I stop you there because
Right.
I want to keep the readings a little bit short because I want to get a couple of them in and ask a few questions if that's okay with you.
Yep,
So,
no worries.
Taking on the story of the town, preparation and research aside, how did you feel about what was a kind of a fairly stupendous task considering the legacy and the story itself?
I think my main worry about writing it was treading on toes of the scholars who have studied the Torn for many years. I wanted to write the book in such a way that all of the magic and monsters and talking rocks were taken out, which of course the monks, when they put it all down on paper in the between the 8th and the 12th centuries, they embellished it a lot as well, and I wanted to get rid of that embellishment. So yeah, it was a daunting task, research aside, just getting the characters correct.
And what research went into it? Like how much preparation went into the actual story?
There's a great deal of research went into. Obviously, I had to read the Torn several times, and I used the Kinsella translation, Thomas Kinsella mainly. But there's also a lot of research goes into Celtic way of life and pre-Christian Ireland. There's not much that we really know because there was no written record. Everything was kept as sort of verbal tradition. The scholars suspect passed down by the Druids from Druid to Druid. So obviously when the monks came to put it all down on paper, it was many hundreds of years after the supposed events took place, or the legendary events took place. I feel personally that if there had been written records, much of this would actually be history rather than just myth.
In terms of, I suppose, all the research and preparation aside, your background is as an editor for quite a long time. Is that a blessing or a curse when you're working on a story like this with so much background and so much history?
It can be both. I think in many ways, because you've had such a long history of editing, you can take too much for granted. So it's very, very difficult to edit your own stuff. But because you spent 35 years doing it to other people's stuff, you don't recognize that fact. I think we were having a discussion just the other day that as soon as you hit the publish button, then all the typos start popping out like sore thumbs.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a blessing and it's also a curse.
And after the 35 years in editorial stuff, what made you arrive at historical fantasy and fiction? How did you get to this place? What influenced you to write this genre? Because it's not for everyone. It's a fairly small community, I guess, of readers.
Yeah. Well, I think my love of mythology came from when I was a kid. I mean, my brother and sister are online, and they'll maybe remember this, but our dad used to have a huge tomb of Greek myths, and bedtime stories in our house was, getting stories read from this tomb of Greek mythology. So I always had a love of mythology. And I think I chose the Irish genre. We have Irish roots. Our grandmother was from Mullingar, but also I think it's because it was so sparsely done to now. There's a lot of people out there writing books based in mythology, and it's mostly Greek and Roman. Very few of them touch on the Celtic mythology. So I thought somebody ought to step forward and do it justice and give it the place it deserves.
Yeah.
And it's also a fascinating period because it's unlike the Greek and the Roman stuff. It's touchable. Conor MacNessa his head was supposed to explode when he discovered or heard of the death of Christ. These are events that supposedly or allegedly took place within touching distance.
Yeah, you made reference to this stuff like the feats and the various happenings that kind of some of them far-fetched, talking rocks and the like. So you make kind of reference to that in your notes about the challenges of writing, especially about Cuchulainn, about Setanta. How did you find those challenges, or how did you go about that? toning down the OTT stuff?
Well, basically, I just discarded it all. You know, I mean, some of the feats were faintly rather ridiculous, even by mythological standards. You know, Setanta was supposed to be able to throw a spear and then run along its shaft while it was in flight. So I didn't find it that difficult. And my favourite authors, people like Henry Treese and Mary Renault, and more latterly David Gemmell, have been there before me. This is not a new thing to take the magic and the monsters out of the mythology. So it's something I've experienced of reading, which obviously helps with writing.
Okay, can we get a little another little reading, please?
We can.
And again, for those of you who haven't been paying attention so far, links to the ebook and paperbacks are on the message on the chat there if you want to have a look at that, and then Phil Hughes Publishing at the bottom if you want to click in there. Okay, Phil.
Okay, so this next reading, the main hero of the book, Fergus, has been sent as an envoy by Queen Maeve. He's escorting her captain of the guards, who's actually the ambassador who's been sent. Basically, Fergus is asleep. So, chapter is called Return and Captain. She was kneeling with her back to him, head bowed, leaning forward, hands in the mud. She was silent, rocking gently backwards and forwards. You betrayed him, he heard. Nothing more than a whisper, quickly borne away on the wind. Now he could hear the sighing of the trees in the forest. The branches seemed to be repeating the word betrayal over and over. He could not speak, but shook his head violently. It was not me, he wanted to scream, but the words would not come. He ran around her so he could lift her up and plead with her to believe him, but he stopped when he reached her front and saw the pools of blood under her hands. Her wrists were gashed. The pools were big. There could be no blood left in her veins. It was then he saw the shimmering paleness of her skin in the moonlight. Bloodless skin, a body ready for internment. Only she was moving. She lifted her head, looked at him with accusing eyes and hissed, "Fergus! Fergus! Fergus!" Someone was shaking him. He opened his eyes. The grogginess, when deep sleep, was interrupted, washing over him. The dream was an indistinct memory by the time he was fully awake, just an uncomfortable feeling somewhere in the back of his mind. He shook his head and rubbed his face, looking up at the warrior. "Bradon, what is it?" "Macroth has returned." Fergus could see worry etched into the warrior's face. Sitting up, he looked at the glade. Warriors were bustling about in the limited light thrown by several campfires. "What hour is it?" "It is still not yet the witching hour. The middle of the night is maybe an hour away." "How long did I sleep?" 2, maybe 3 hours. "You said Macroth is back. What happened of what of Usnek?" "Dead." "What do you mean, dead?" "He was executed by Fiachna. His guards have savagely beaten Macroth with Cayman, looks like. It is a wonder that he survived." "Where is he?" "His wounds are being tended." "Bring me to him." Looking down on Macroth, seated on a log with a warrior bathing his wounds, Fergus could not decipher the look in the guard captain's eyes. He did not know him, not really, but there was something there, partially veiled and disconcerting. "What happened?" he asked. Macroth looked up from under blackening eyes. A warrior was bathing a nasty gash in his head. He winced and said, "Careful, Buttlelam. You will hang by your Miali if you hurt me again." "Sorry, Captain," the warrior mumbled, a slight shake to his hand. Fergus found himself wondering if Macroth had treated his warriors the same way he treated his mare. "What happened, Macroth?" he repeated, trying not to show his impatience. "They say Usnek is dead." "Leave me in peace, Fergus. Can you not see I am a little indisposed?" "I'll leave you in peace when you tell me what happened." "Usnek insulted the maddened Fiachna. Too much meat and mead. I tried to apologize, but someone knocked me senseless. They splashed a pail in my face to wake me. I watched as they dragged Usnek's corpse through the gates. Judging by the hang of his head, they strangled him. Fiachna did not have me killed because of my status, but he ordered them to beat me with their cannon. Fergus did not hesitate. Wake everyone, we attack at once. We do not, Macroft mumbled through swollen lips. What do you mean? We must avenge the death of Usnek and your beating. It is a slight on your honour, the honour of your queen and the honour of Connacht. What do you care about the honour of Connacht? You are an Ulsterman, Macroft hissed. Fergus felt his hand strain towards the hilt of a sword he had left beside his fire. Frowning, he looked around at the warriors standing in a circle. Despite their professed support of him only a few hours before, he could see they would follow the orders of their captain. You can't be serious, Fergus tried again. If this gets out, every vassal in area will try us. Try us, Fergus. You are not one of us. But that aside, I have never been more serious. We will wait for the dawn and then ride for Crockham. It is an order. I thought I was in command of the company. It is true, Fergus, that you were in command during the march. The march is done. I am in command now. Post sentries, he called to no one. We ride for Crockham at first light. Whatever you say, Captain. Fergus put as much insult into the title as he could muster. When he was sure all had heard and knew he was not being cowardly, he went back to his fire, wrapped himself in his rug, and lay down to sleep.
So there are a lot of conflicted characters, none more so than Maeve.
Yeah.
What was it like to write Maeve?
Yeah, it's very hard because Maeve was anything but a one-dimensional character. She was a mix. She was renowned for her promiscuity and apparently was quite evil at times. So she was very interesting to write.
She has a vulnerability as well, though.
Yeah, she was vulnerable. I think she thought she was working for the good of the Five Kingdoms. Maybe I ought to explain what the Five Kingdoms were. They were basically, as the counties are today, of Ireland, with the addition of Meath, which was also a kingdom. So there was Connacht, Ulster, Meath, Leinster, and Ulster. Sorry, Connacht, Ulster, Leinster, Munster, and Meath were the Five Kingdoms. Yeah, very difficult to write Maeve, but enjoyable.
And again, the relationship then with Ailill, not your average married couple, but certainly could do with a counsellor maybe. Do you think Ailill was right in suggesting that she needs my help but is too proud to admit it? Or was he just too far, or were they too far gone at that point?
I think the actual end of their marriage doesn't really happen until towards the end of the book. I think they're both still harboring maybe subconscious desires for the marriage to succeed. And I think they were in love. And I think the loss of their son has caused issues. Of course, her son was a warrior, but it wasn't so much his death as the method of it, which I hasten to add I invented. It's not part of the actual mythology itself. It was created because of there were incongruencies in the myths, in the various stories. So Main Milskothak, very difficult to pronounce some of these names, was part of the invasion force that came from Britain during the reign of Conor Mór. And then he was meant to be included in Maeve's army that invaded Cooley in the cattle raid, which to me didn't make any sense because he invaded Ireland under the command of the Reaver Ingsel. How could he then continue to serve his mother as a general or a captain of her forces, because he was guilty of treachery. So I've took it upon myself to correct that incongruency.
Yeah. Well, it was very well done. Can I just, we're kind of running a little bit short on time. I want to get another reading in if possible.
Yeah.
So we might open it up to the floor. If there's anyone who has any questions, we might get a couple of them in now, and we might try and get another reading in then before our toast. So if there's a question from the floor, if anyone wants to either put into the chat or unmute yourself and work away. Or else I'll keep going myself. Okay, well, as I was saying to you, Phil, one of my favorite characters is this Jinan. Pronounce it for me. Jinan.
Yeah.
I like that mysterious person in the background pulling strings and you know, working from behind the scenes. Is this a character that existed, or is that someone that you created? A character that you created?
Okay, Jinan was actually a son of Cathfa, the druid, who was also a druid. Cathfa had two sons, Jinan and Imrin. He appears in the Torn as one of the druids who, before the Battle of Gereth, they were throwing out spells to make the armies of Connacht confused for the battle. And that's his only appearance in the mythology. He is actually going to be my CAD file. So the next book, the Brother of Justice, is actually Genon. And there's also a short story about him called Genon Rising, which is available from Amazon with the others. And there's another short story that will be coming out in November, Genon in Shadow, which is basically how he meets Conal Kernak on the Isle of Shadow, the Shadowy Isle, which is the Isle of Skye, which is where the witch Scathach trained warriors, including Cuchulainn, Conal and Fergus, all trained under her. It's quite a complex interweb, mixing metaphors there, but there's a whole web of stories going on that are huge amounts of material for me, which is wonderful.
Yeah. Okay, well, can we get one more reading, so if that's okay, please?
Yeah. Okay, so basically, the Queen has convinced the Elder Council of Druids that she has the right to invade Cooley, and now she's trying to convince the kings of Leinster and Munster to join her forces. Slouching in his throne, Maeve could see Aiel's mind was not in the feast hall. Once again, the King of Connacht was swimming in the mead he had become so fond of, or ale, Maeve allowed. His promises are like so much chaff during harvest, blown away at the first threat of a heavy wind. With a surge of disgust, she thought about when she married him. She thought about the girlish dreams of a new bride, dreams of a strong man, an honest king with strong seed to provide sons and a sharp blade with which to protect them. Not that she ever had those dreams. Her adolescence snatched away when her father gave her into sexual slavery, honouring a blood debt. She understood dreams of love and happiness, but she knew she would be a fool to believe in them. By building armies and crushing enemies, the strong made their own dreams. Sighing, Maeve looked at the kings, Mesgegra, king of Leinster, to the left of Aiel, to the right, Dora MacDaedad, king of Munster. It took all her will not to cringe, not the stuff of false dreams. Sorry, not the stuff of even false dreams. They were lickspittles. Macnessa had been making their choices for them for years. Even though the ghouls of nightmare, she needed them. Without Leinster and Munster, the Elder Council would not sanction what she intended. Without them, she would fail, and Éire would fall into the evil hands of the King of the Ulaid. Why are we here, Maeve? Mesgegra asked, with a frown. Your envoy said an urgent matter about the health of the Five Kingdoms. What could Connacht have to do with the health of the Five Kingdoms? You're not even on top of your own health. Meaning? I think my meaning plain, Mesgegra sneered. Maeve knew the sneer to be directed at Aiel. She looked down on the king, loathing him in that moment. To evoke sneers from these two idiots made her want to gag. They had no right. They had bent themselves over barrels for the gratification of Ulster for years. The black bags around their eyes framed their subservience, supported by round shoulders caused by forever bowing their acquiescence to the defiler. It was only the events during the Semaine festival that made them sit up and take note, at least as far as their suppressed postures would allow. Maeve was under no illusions. They would not have responded to her invitation had the hound not bashed in the brains of the women of Tara. I think you know why you are here. Tell us anyway, Mesgegra said, the sneer still plain. Tell you anyway. I must put the obvious into words for you, because your lack of brain between you was only just held in. We have to do something about Ulster, and we can only do it if we unite. Are you mad, woman? MacDedad scoffed. Woman, is it? I'm a queen, MacDedad. You will address me in the correct manner. Or, Conal, Maeve called. The warrior walked out from the shadows, concealing him. As always, he had his hands crossed over the pommel of his sword, leaving no room for misunderstanding. Maeve tried to imagine Mac Roth in place of Conal, but could not. Without the ceremonial helmet adding to his stature, her captain of guards would be next to useless. Conal Cernach, what are you doing in the camp of Connaught? The King of Leinster asked, a sudden tick appearing on his cheek. I, Mesgegra, have seen the turning of the tides. I have accepted something must be done to stop the beast, or we all pay the price. Beast? To whom do you refer, Conal Cernach? Mac Nessa, as you well know, Mesgegra. And now you are being used as a hammer to appease the wishes of nothing more than a nice arse, are you? See it as you will, my friend, but I would urge you to use the proper forms of address, Conal said, moving his hand from pommel to hilt and taking a step closer to the table. We should stop this bickering, MacDedad interjected, looking at Conal from the corner of his eye. What is it you propose, lady? I think we should unite and take war to Ulster. I repeat, lady, are you mad? Ulster have the Red Branch. We cannot hope to succeed in battle against them, even united. But putting that aside, we have no premise for an invasion. The elders would condemn any action without just cause. You have not heard what happened to my envoy, to Cooley. The kings shook their heads. One executed, the other beaten, and returned to me with a message. I will not repeat the message. Suffice it to say it was very insulting, even to a practiced woman such as I. The elders would find it reason enough for retaliation. That is reason enough, but what of the Red Branch? We do not have the strength to battle them. They are the reason no one has tried before. What if we were to attack while they were suffering their pangs? The kings both looked at Maeve as though she truly were mad. Normally, the looks would have caused her to order their deaths. Instead, she held up a hand to Conal. Despite the disrespect in their stares, she did understand. Attacking Ulster during the pangs, when the warriors of Emain were unable to stand, would break a pact that had been in force for hundreds of years. I think I've heard enough. Mesgegra stood up from the table and turned to leave. If we were not to attack Emain directly, Maeve asked. What do you mean? We could march on Cooley and not have to attack Ulster or Emain. If we took the herds of Fiachna, it would be a humiliation to Mac Nessa from which he would never recover. The Ulaid would depose him. Perhaps not. Whatever were to happen with these lofty plans, lady, I hear nothing of interest for Munster, MacDedad said, leaning forward in his chair. Send for Mac Roth, Maeve called. Mac Roth shuffled up the aisle of the feast hall, slowly, in obvious pain. One of his eyes closed, the other swollen to near closure. Lips split and a scabbed gash in his pate. He was using a spear shaft as a crutch. The kings looked on him but said nothing. Mac Roth, please tell the lords what you saw in the feast hall of Fiachna. Mac Roth bowed and said, I saw great wealth, retainers well dressed, warriors bedecked with golden torques, an abundance of meat on the table. He had 20 warriors in the hall. The gates were unguarded. We passed his herds on the road. They were protected only by herdsmen, without warriors. What would you surmise from what you saw? The Queen prompted. Fiachna is one of the wealthiest lords in the 5 kingdoms, but he is arrogant and unprotective, relying too much on Ulster. His wealth is there for the taking. So, kings, there you have it. If you support me, you will have access to the easiest plunder in the 5 kingdoms. Maeve smiled to herself as she saw the eyes of the 2 kings take on an animation hitherto not seen. Thank you, Macroth. You may go. The warrior bowed, gave Conal a dirty look, obvious even through his bruises, and hobbled from the hall without another word. So, with the red branch in their cups, we invade Cooley and steal this wealth. And how much of this plunder would you give up? All of it, my lords. Connacht is motivated by the safety of the 5 kingdoms, not by the pull of easy plunder. Neither of the kings noticed the rebuke. Both were too engrossed in thoughts of what they could do with their share. Maeve, what is happening? Aile mumbled, bleary-eyed and unsure where he was. Nothing, Aile. Go back to sleep.
Poor old Aileen. Well done. Owen, have you a question there, Owen Gallagher? Or are you just high-fiving us?
Yeah, hi Phil.
Hi.
I couldn't find my mute button there in the last question opportunity. Phil, I really enjoyed the Milesian Son of Light. Very good read. I must say, excellent book.
Thank you.
One thing that I did want to ask you was that there's obviously a lot of back and forth between Scotland and Wales and Anglesey as well. Are there references to the same sort of legends in those places, you know, that you could see the threads between the likes of Cuchulainn going to Scotland? Is he referenced there in any of their folklore?
I think I've not really studied the Scottish folklore or the Welsh Celtic Gaelic folklore either, but I do believe the legends are interwoven. Scathach, for example, who trained warriors, who trained Cuchulainn, was actually Scottish. So she appears a lot in their mythology, as far as I'm aware, and obviously the Druids are very, very deeply entrenched in both Scottish and Welsh mythology. Merlin, I don't know if you noticed, there was a reference to Merlin as one of the Druids on the Elder Council. It was with the old spelling, which is Myrdddin, pronounced Mithrin, but that's actually Merlin. So yeah, they are interwoven. I've not really studied that much of their mythology, but I will be doing that, because I am going to be writing a book about the suppression of the Druids. When Boudicca revolted, she was able to do so because the Paulinius, the Roman general, invaded Anglesey to destroy the Druids. So his legions were gone.
I suppose that gives credence to the belief that a lot of this is actually based in fact and real history.
Yeah,
when
I believe
crosses
so.
over and there's threads like that. Well, very good. Thanks for that.
Thanks.
Hi, can I ask a question? Oh,
let's see. Is that Sue?
No, there was somebody before me, so you go first.
That's me, but you go, Sue. I'll go after.
Are you sure? I was just thinking, Phil, there's so much that goes into this book. I mean, how long does it take you to write? How, the research and everything like that? Do you focus purely on this one book through the whole time? I mean, it's amazing.
No, I actually, I always have several projects going on at the same time, mainly because it's my weapon against writer's block. I think if I get stuck staring at the screen and I can't move forward, then I'll switch to another book. So I work to what's known as an agile development process, and I don't know if you guys have ever heard of this. Some of you will have, I'm sure. You've met it in your work environments. But basically, I set myself weekly targets. I know how long a book's going to be, more or less, so I can set weekly targets in that way, and I structure it in such a way that it doesn't take me very long once the research has been done. And really the research for a lot of these books is the same. So once you've done the research, you don't need to do it again. So, for example, a lot of the sort of the life that these people were leading, I've researched, and I don't need to research that again. So I think from when I actually first started to put my plan together to when I hit the publish button on Daughter of War was probably 4 months.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm usually doing about 3 books a year.
Okay. Well, I've never read Lord of the Rings, or which much to everybody's horror. So you are my J.R.R. Tolkien at the moment.
Well, thank you very much. What a compliment.
Not a bad compliment.
Did you hear that, Connor? I'm J.R.R. Tolkien.
Michelle, have you a question?
I do, thank you. J.R.R. Tolkien's my favourite author, and that's why I like these ones in particular, Phil, the fantasy and the mythological ones. My question was, is this a direct sequel to The Son of Light, or is it a little way afterwards?
No, it's actually, it's not really a sequel in a sequential way. The 2 stories happen at the same time. So Son of Light is the story from Cuchulain's viewpoint, and actually Daughter of War is more or less the same story from several different viewpoints. So
Right.
I actually leave Cuchulain out of it in a viewpoint perspective, because he's already given his 2 penneth in Son of Light, which was written in first person.
Yeah.
Where Daughter of War is a third person narrative with I've actually got 7 main perspectives, and that was done on purpose because 7 is a sort of a power number in Celtic mythology.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you for the question.
Okay, I think it's that time of the evening where we will have a little toast. So if everyone wants to turn on their videos again, unless anyone's undressed in the meantime. So I suppose a toast to congratulate Phil on what is an excellent read, really enjoyable, fantastic bit of work, brilliant research and attention to detail. So I have a special bottle of Buckfast here just for the occasion. So can we all raise whatever beverage you may have to hand to Phil or Micháel, depending on your mood. And congratulations. Well done. Well done.
Cheers.
Thanks,
Well
thanks
done.
everybody.
Nice one.
Never lunge at a goose.
Thanks for coming.